Okay, so we're going to go over dimensioning today and how AutoCAD deals with it. So we can just draw some stuff. AutoCAD can dimension 3D objects as well as two-dimensional objects just as easily. So even if I'm in layout view and I have nothing here, I could draw a circle. I'm just going to draw a few things, maybe a circle and a couple lines or whatever. Okay, so I would use the dimension layer that we set up. So there's should be a dim layer in here, right? And if I go to the annotate ribbon, there's a whole dimension area of the ribbon that we can use. Okay, so maybe the easiest one to use is this, I don't know what they call it, a smart dimension or quick dimension or just the dimension tool, right? Although arguably it's faster when it's a normal object or whatever, but I think I want to start here anyway, where you can choose the kind of dimension you need, right? So if I want to dimension the circle, I would use the diameter, right? And then I can just click on the circle, and then it puts its own center mark on there, so that's nice. And it'll stretch out and put the size of the circle, right? So, and it puts a little diameter symbol in front of it for you, and that's so nice. There you go. Arcs, I didn't draw an arc yet. Okay, let's put that on the regular object layers. Okay, arcs usually use a radius. So I'm going to choose radius this time. And same deal, puts a center mark on it still, depending on how you want to do it. But so radius of 2. So there's a couple things that we want to talk about when we dimension things, but we'll get there. Precision is one of them, right? Are really both of these, well, you know, was I so lucky to get a radius of 2 and a diameter of 2? Well, probably not, right? The precision of the dimension is how precise it needs to be, right? So that means how many decimal places, how far, how precise is the instrument you're using? Does it go to 1/100th of an inch or whatever, right? So you can select a dimension and right click on it and go to precision and choose the number of decimal places you want to choose. So there, so it's not really 2, it's actually almost 2.2. So there you go. And I can do the same thing over here. You can do them all at once as well. And that's really actually much more. So you see that we thought that both of those were 2 inches, one in radius, one in diameter, but far from it. Pretty much, I mean, as far as precision goes, that wasn't very precise. Okay, and we'll get into that a little bit more when we set up a dimension style, right? We can have some preset parameters set for how the dimensions are produced in AutoCAD. So before I do that, I just want to go over a couple more. A linear dimension is probably the most common one. That will dimension. So if I click from one part to another, maybe from here to, let's say, here, that will give you a horizontal dimension, or if you put your cursor in the right place, it'll give you a vertical one, right? So a linear dimension is either horizontal or vertical, right? And again, precision, right? Okay, another kind of dimension. So we can, we could dimension this whole thing, and a lot of times that is what you need. You need a linear dimension to find out. If I was going to cut this out of a piece of sheet metal, I would want those linear dimensions, because that's where I could start on the right side and I could measure out. And I'd also want, I'd probably need this dimension again, but horizontally, right? And so I'd need to go, 3 point whatever, and then 2 point whatever up. And so I could mark that corner, and then I could make that cut or whatever. If I just knew the length of this thing, which you can do, right? So if I just use aligned, I can click from here to here, and it actually aligns the dimension with, so you probably don't want to do all of it, like either linear or align, but probably not both. Okay, let's try it again. This time, well, yeah, I can click it here. Here's an align dimension, but that doesn't help much because I don't know what angle that is, but maybe I want to dimension it with an angle. Right, so let's see how an angle works. So angular dimensions need 2 corners, right? So maybe this end and this line and that line, and it'll give the dimension between them, or the angle between them. It'll dimension the angle between them. Okay, we usually want to avoid putting dimensions inside a part, but if it's a large part, that's sometimes the best way to do it. To avoid like excessively long, extension lines. So if you look at this dimension, I wouldn't want to dimension it like this because I have the feature I'm trying to dimension here, and then I have the dimension way over here. So that these lines that extend from the edges or the ends of this line are called extension lines. Okay, and so excessively long extension lines are difficult to read. So you want to avoid that. So if you have a large area and you're dimensioning something inside that area, like a hole inside this part or something, maybe it would be better to have the dimension inside the part. So that's just food for thought. So let's say I want to keep that dimension off of that. So an angle, maybe I could put the dimension there, right? So instead of putting it to the lines itself, kind of want to keep them off of it, right? But then I have a problem with the extension line here, but I can fix that when I'm ready. So I probably want to get rid of that one anyway. So this one would be pretty tough to dimension if I cared. So let's use a linear dimension for this and just send it over here. When I have stacked dimensions like this, I kind of want to keep the arrows in line with each other. It looks very neat. If this was off a little bit, that would not look as neat, right? Let's get rid of that one. Okay, and I'd also want, so this might be a little tricky to dimension here, where I have, now I'm kind of cutting across that dimension. So, how do I deal with that? At this point, I may have to like put that guy in there that's easier to read than having the lines cross each other, right? So, but you want to avoid dimensioning right on the lines themselves, but in this case, probably kind of unavoidable. So anyway, but that's how it works. So what we want to do also is set up a style, like I mentioned before. So and we can set like a default precision, and then we'll talk about the rules on that. So if I go to, okay, that's just a sample drawing here. So what I want to do is open up my template, add a dimension style to my template and save it and close it, and then that'll be what I use, right? So if I remember where my template is, right, I can right click and go to options with nothing selected, right? You can right click and go to options and then go to template settings under the files tab and go to default template file name for QNew, and it's on my H drive in my templates folder, and it's my 111 template for 2021. Okay, so I know where it is, so now I want to open it. Let's go back to my start and open a file. And go to template as far as my file type. Well, here it is. So I'm going to change my file type right away to drawing template. It goes to AutoCAD's default place where it's buried somewhere, but I know where my template is. So I'll just go to my template. Yeah, that's that one. Okay, so this is my blank drawing template. And yeah, let's go to the annotate ribbon and dimension, and I'm going to go to the dimension style manager, which is just dim style if you want to type it in, or you can click on the little arrow on the right side. So let's pause here and make sure everybody's at this point. Okay, I already have a style set up here, but I'm going to go through the process. So you probably have annotative and standard. So I'm going to click on annotative and click new. And this will pop up. Create new dimension style. This is where you can name it. And so we're going to name it ANSI, which is short for the American National Standards Institute, which produces these standards for dimensioning stuff, right? Drawings. Okay, and we'll start with the annotative style. So annotative just means that you can make AutoCAD automatically scale the size of the text and everything for you, depending on your drawings, your print scale, right? So we'll name it ANSI. I already have one, so I'll call it ANSI 1. And continue. And then you get the big box where you can edit a bunch of stuff, right? So I'm going to start on the left tab. There's only a few things to really change, but I do want to explain a few of these things, I guess. The dimension lines are the lines, the arrowed lines, right? And so their color and everything, if you leave it by block, it'll just leave it because we don't have any blocks, really. It'll just be whatever layer it's on, right? So that's why we use our dimension layer. The extension line, same way. So there's really nothing to do here, although there is one setting here that I just want to point out, the baseline spacing. That's your default spacing from the part should be about 3/8 of an inch. So 0.375 or 0.38 is a pretty good size to start. So you don't want your dimensions too close to the part where it kind of crowds it. So that helps. Well, anyway, that's the only thing to really say in this box. Oh, yeah, there's a couple others, I guess. This offset from origin, that's the gap. See how if you go around the edge of the part here in the sample, the dimensions don't actually touch the edges, right? That's the offset. This is 1/16 of an inch, 0.0625, right? So it's easy. Oh, I shouldn't have canceled. But anyway, it's easy to, let me go to my other drawing here. See, if I had, I don't know, dimensioned, and this one is not so easy. If I tried to dimension one of these lines or something from, yeah, okay, let's just try this. It's easy enough to clutter up this thing. If I go to the midpoint to, I don't know, parallel to that or something, and then I come out here, that's not going to help me much. It still puts a gap here from where you clicked, right? So that's that 1/16 of an inch. If you have more rectangular things, it's easy to, let me just draw one now. Hard enough time to. Okay, let's say I'm trying to dimension this. And I'll change the layer to, okay. And, okay, so I'm going to dimension it. Okay, so if I click from here to here, it's just going to give me a horizontal or a vertical dimension. And see how if I didn't click on the corner, that dimension line just covers up that gap. That's supposed to be there, or that offset, right? So move that back down. And now that's how it's supposed to be. You'd be surprised how easy it is to cover or to remove that gap by not getting on the corner, right? So be aware of that anyway while we do it. So, okay, let me go back to this. And I'm just going to modify it. So here's the, I just clicked on modify just because I already have an ANSI dimension. So all these numbers are the same. So I haven't changed anything. And I'll jump to, and the extend, okay, so I talked about the offset from origin. That's where we are, right? The other number here, the extend beyond dimension lines, that's just how far the extension line goes past the arrow. And so you can control that. Big deal, right? That's about 3/16 of an inch, which is fine. Symbols and arrows, we use closed filled ones. So that's fine. And the arrow size is about 3/16 of an inch. That's fine too. We usually want to use center marks. We want to use lines. which makes a complete line through like circles and things like that instead of a little plus at the center. So, or none. So we have three options: none, mark, and line. So none is there's no mark for the circle. A mark in the middle is just the plus, and the line gives it the extension lines, right? And so you notice also there's no gap between the center mark, the center line, and the extension line, right? It's using the center line as an extension line. So there's no gap. Bless you. All right. So yeah, there's not much else to say in this one. So we just change that to line and you're good. And the rest of the settings are pretty good. So we don't have to worry about that. Text. We want our text style to be our ANSI style. So just make sure that we're on, that you have that ANSI style, right? Instead of standard, which is kind of crappy. And the text height is 1/8 of an inch. Okay, that's an ANSI standard as well, so we'll keep that. That's about it. Fit, annotative, that's it. That's as far as the size of the text goes. Sorry, what? Question?
Sorry, my apologies.
Oh, okay. No problem. The fit options, now what's nice, and I didn't really mention, is, you know, when you put a dimension down there, depending on how close it is or whatever, AutoCAD automatically adjusts where it puts the text, where it puts the arrows, and where it puts the extension lines, more or less, right? So text placement and arrows, best left to either text or arrows, and you can kind of grip edit that to force it, or you can, well, that's probably the easiest way, is grip editing in it if it doesn't do it the way you want it to. You can fine tune it by placing the text manually, but we don't want to mess with that. And just make sure it's annotative, so that's it. Primary units, this is where we can specify our precision, right? So we just want to use decimal units, right? Just decimal places, right? Instead of fractions. Typically, fractions are used, though, in architectural drawings and some things, but most mechanical types of drawings and even civil types of drawings are just using decimal units. So precision, let's talk about that. 2 decimal places is the standard precision for any dimensions that are greater than an inch. Like a whole, anything bigger than an inch gets 2, right? Some dimensions that go smaller, there are some that go smaller, right? 1/2 an inch or whatever, they use 3. AutoCAD has no accommodation for that kind of rule, right? So we can leave it at 2 because most dimensions, I mean, most parts, I guess, that we draw are bigger than an inch. And the parts that aren't, you can just right-click them and change the precision to them, right? So that avoids too much clicking, I guess. So that's it. The other things we need to talk about are you want to suppress leading zeros, right? So without that, you notice that little point, it puts a 0 in front of the decimal. We don't want to work with that. We're not going to suppress leading zeros on angles. Angles get 1 decimal place of precision. So go to 1/10 of a degree, basically, and that's usually good enough. I think that's about it. We don't need to mess with alternate units, right? We can also dimension things in, see how the multiplier 25.4, that would, if it was 1 inch, it would say 25.4, which is in millimeters, right? So it converts the units to millimeters. So it just multiplies by the conversion factor and gives you a millimeter unit. So you can dual dimension stuff. If you're drawing something that gets sent overseas, like a drawing that got sent somewhere else, maybe you'd want to do that. So, but typically you don't. And we'll talk about tolerances later. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to set ANSI to the current style. So I set current and close. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. Oh, that was in my dimension style there. And so in your template, make sure you go back to the home ribbon and zoom all, right? So Z space A space. So that zooms to your regular zoom level. So you start drawing at the normal, unless you have to change your limits. That's all good to go. And then let's save your template and then close it. Close it. Okay. That's it. That's our style that we set. So now when you make a new drawing, that dimension style is ready to go. All right. So now that I have it laid out in my drawing, right? So in model space, I just modeled it up in 3D, laid it out, gave an 1.5 inches between views. I'll change my layer to the dimension layer. I would also put center lines wherever it needed to be, even though those diameters and stuff put their own dimension line or center lines on there. So that's helpful. Anyway, we want to completely dimension this thing in so much that we don't over dimension it, of course. So let's start with the outside kinds of dimensions, right? So there are dimensions that show size as well as positioning, right? Most of this is just going to be size because I don't have any other details like little holes in it or something that I would have to locate or find the position of them. So yeah, this will be pretty quick. And we'll go over some of the basics of some of the fundamental rules, right? So the book has that, but we'll go over it. So most of the dimensions should be on the view that shows the shape of the part, right? So I could show length. Well, the only two dimensions I have to show length on are the top and the front view, right? So let's do that. Where's my annotative ribbon here? There it is. And I'm in my dimension layer, so linear, right? So I can click from one end to the other, and I show the length on that. Oh, you know what? I changed the yeah. Hold on. Let me modify that and set my precision to 2 decimal places here. Should be good. That may be the only thing I need. Okay, so it should say 5.00. So there's the length, right? What about width? I could put the width on the top view because that's like that 1.5 inch width here, or I could put it on the side view. Now, most likely, the main shape of this thing, I mean, it's just rectangular in these 2 views, but on the right side view, that's where I should probably put most of my dimensions. Now, I'm getting a little tired of clicking on one side and then clicking on the other side. So there is another way to do that. So I have that line here. So when I click on that dimension, I'm just going to hit space. And you can see in the brackets there, it says select objects, right? So if I just hit the space bar, it turns to a pick box where I can just select the item that I want to dimension. So I click on that edge and it goes right to it. And see how I lined it up, see how I lined up those arrows, not perfectly, but pretty close to the same level. Okay. One thing I do want to avoid is putting dimensions like out on the outer edges, like below these dimensions. I might have to, or on the left side, or on the right side. I want to kind of keep my dimensions in between all these views. So it still keeps the basic size of the drawing kind of the same, but now I can add more detail without making it bigger. So in other words, like I wouldn't want to put this dimension over here. I'd rather put it right here. Yeah. Let's make that bigger. There you go. Right? So it's much better in between the view than out here all by itself. Now I might not have enough room, so I have some angles in here to dimension. So let's see if we can get those in there. I could dimension, just click on these 2 and just put a dimension in here, but then, you know, I want to put it out here. I can't, you know, there's not a great way to do that. And using 120 degrees instead of like with, you know, a 30 degree from the horizontal kind of looks better. So how about I draw a little, so I'm gonna give it a gap here of a 1/16 of an inch. And I'll draw just a short horizontal line here, right? Then I can go to my angle and then choose that line and then this edge. And then I can put this 30 out here, and I don't like where it is over there. It's on top of the part and stuff, so maybe I can put it just right there. So how's that? Oh, and then it puts a little gap here, so maybe I can move that out and cover that up so it has a straight, looks like a nice line there. So that looks a whole lot better. And then there's actually two of them, right? So I want to put a 2x in there instead of having to do that again, right? So I can just double click the text and put a 2x in there. See? So that looks better. And then I also have, you know, that's going to crowd out this length here, which is a 1/4 inch. So maybe I could put a 2x on that one. Another linear dimension here. Put that guy right there. Click that. Put 2x. Can get a little crowded, but we don't care. Yeah, maybe I do want to put this down here so it gives me a little more room. Okay. Am I done? Not quite. I do have one more dimension to add, I think. I want to know, so to draw this, I didn't know how far to make this, like where's this line? I need to locate this edge right here, right? I don't need to dimension it because everything else is dimensioned, and that would be redundant, I guess. But I do want to set a linear dimension, and I could use the top view here and dimension there to there, right? But the problem with that is I'm dimensioning to a hidden line, and that's kind of a no-no, right? That doesn't, yeah, it's just a no-no, I guess. Sometimes that's the only thing you can do, I guess. A lot of times you can break a part open to see the interior detail, but I can also do it in this view. So I'm going to click from here to there, and I'll put that dimension maybe right there. That means I have to change this and move this one up. And if that looks ugly, maybe I could, well, I could put this over here. Perhaps. I kind of like that. Move this down a little bit. Dimensions can be closer to each other than they can be to the part itself, so that's good. Okay, so now I could draw. Could I make it? If I was given this drawing, could I actually produce this part? Am I missing any information? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got it all. I mean, right? Okay, maybe I know its length, I know its height, I know its width, I know all this interior detail, pretty much done, right? I feel bad that I didn't get any dimensions on this top view, but who cares, right? I'm done, right? I could put this 1.5 inch on that if it makes it feel better, but you know, whatever, right? Okay. So that's basically almost it. Remember, our rule about precision is that dimensions that were less an inch or less needed 3 decimal places. So that's this one. I have 2 of them, right? So I select them both, right click, go to precision, set it to 3, and see if you have to reposition those because it could knock it out of the way or whatever. AutoCAD automatically repositions it, so it may put it somewhere where you don't want it. So anyway, that's pretty much it. I'm done. I put the title on it and changed the date, drawing number, all good to go. Sound good? Okay, so some of these basic rules here start on page 252 and go on for a couple pages here, but just kind of paraphrase them and let you read those on your own kind of. But anyway, we've noticed how we put most of our dimensions in this example on the view that showed the shape better, right? It'd be really awkward to put like a 30-degree dimension on the front view because I see that surface, but that'd be really hard to show that. But it's way easier, much easier, I guess, to show it on where I see the angle itself, right? So that's the overriding principle there is where I see the shape of it. So I see the edge of this. That's actually the length of that edge, whereas this surface is not that shape of the surface anyway. Okay. Unless absolutely necessary, dimensions should not be placed within the outlines of the view, right? So just like what we said, we tried to keep all the dimensions off the part, right? So none of the dimensions are inside the outline of the part. That's good. And we're trying to, notice I didn't put that 1.5 inch dimension on that top view, even though it felt lonely out there not having a dimension on it. The idea is we kind of want to group our dimensions together so it's just easier to read them. If you're ping-ponging all over the place looking for the dimension for that specific part on each view, then it's harder, right? Notice also, here's another idea, is I dimension this 1/4 inch dimension for this leg. I could have put it on the front view, but I don't see the shape of it in the front view. I just see a line going to another line, right? Whereas I see the shape in the right side view, so I preferred to put that 1/4 inch dimension on that view for it. Okay, so grouping dimensions, keeping them off the part, dimensioning where you see the shape of it. Okay, you shouldn't have to do a bunch of math to figure out how to make this thing, right? In other words, the dimensioning should be complete enough to where I could get a block that's 5 by 2.5 by 1.5, come in and 1/4 inch and cut away at a 30-degree angle halfway into it, or 3/4 of an inch in, and do it on the other side, and then flatten it out, and then you're done, right? So I didn't need to use any math to figure out the length of this line because it kind of just fell into place. So that's an important part. Yeah, you can skew dimensions if needed to get them out of the way, but it's kind of preferred not to. So the linear dimension will, like we said, vertical or horizontal, and most of the parts will do that, and the line helps you draw dimension things at angles. But you can set angles of dimensions if needed. So show you how to do that later. Also, we don't want to duplicate dimensions, right? So it's so easy to do because I have 3 views, and so I have, I could dimension the length right here, right? And I could dimension the width right here. And oh, that looks so much better because I have so much stuff on there, right? Well, this dimension and this dimension are redundant, right? They're the same. So don't do more work than you have to, right? So could have put that on the that 5-inch dimension on the top view to keep it from being lonely, but still, that's more of a grouping thing too. So, all right. Good. We can use, the other idea is it's good to use like notes like 2 times or, equally spaced, or there's a bunch of abbreviations you can use to avoid having a lot of repetitive dimensions. So we'll have an example where we have maybe several like teeth on a gear or something like that, where you can dimension 1 tooth and just say it's all over, right? Whatever. All right. Right on. That's about it. So we can just get on to another one here. So after putting the border on it, I need more room, right? Well, actually, I kind of don't, right? Because if I can select all these views, I might be able to just kind of center it better. I'm gonna get that right. That's not too bad. A little bit too close to the top there. So let's see. Maybe bring it down a little. So that gives me room. So I've left out the little 3D view of it just because it's not necessary now. Okay, so yeah, we'll figure out what drawing number that is and the date and things like that. But yeah. Yeah, this was a fun one. It really could be done in the front view where you could just draw the big circle and the one circle on the left, which was just aligned horizontally. So the through hole, which is 3/8 in diameter, and then the counterbore circle. So if that was just in 2D, all in the same view. You could have extruded the big one 1/2 inch, the through hole 1/2 inch, right? And then the larger 9/16 inch diameter 1/4 inch, and then subtracted them. Well, and then actually rotated and copied, rotate with the copy command, and then rotated and rotated and rotated until you got all 5. That's one way to do it. Anyway, so laying it out, we'll add it here and change the scale to 1. That way, we only need 2 views. Probably the top view is not necessary, just that and that. So that looks pretty okay. So I'd be tempted to put the center lines in there, but I think I want to dimension it first and then put in dimension lines where, center lines where needed and stuff. So the easiest things to dimension to start with would be probably the diameters, right? So we can put a diameter on that. That puts a center mark on it, so that's nice. Also, I do want to put a circle to represent the centers of all those circles because they're on the same center, right? So they're all on the same circle, and then I'll dimension that. So that's useful to do instead of putting it, I don't know how, yeah, well, that's how the book would do it too, I suppose. Anyway, I'll dimension that. And in the spirit of grouping, we want to group those together. I don't know why my dimensions, I got to change that. 2. Okay. Then I can dimension. So there, basically, I have almost everything. Let's add the 1 thickness there, the depth of the thing, and that'll take 3 decimal places because it's less than an inch, right? Okay, and then I'll put in these center marks later, but let's dimension this guy here. We can dimension 1 dimension, can take care of all these circles. We could place it with these other dimensions. That'll be nice. So I'll use a diameter dimension, and I'm going to dimension the outside hole here. So I'm going to click on the outside edge. So, and the reason for that is it's actually the through hole I want to dimension, but we'll see how that works. So that's the 9/16, right? Well, I wanted to mention the first thing that should be listed in this is the through hole, right? So I'm going to double click that and I'm going to type in %. So I could right click, but you can type in %D, and that puts it, that's degrees. %, what is it? P, that's a plus minus. %, what is it for a diameter symbol? Okay, I'll right click and I'll select. So if I right click right in there and symbol and diameter, C. Yeah, okay, fine. And there's my 0.375 for my 3/8. I'll hit enter and that puts that in there. And that's actually the dimension of the outer hole, which is the counterbore. So I need a lowercase v, which this is the whole reason we use that GDT font, is the lowercase letters are symbols, and the counterbore is one of them. A countersink is, what is that, W, right? And that's the angled counterbore, basically. And let's go to the end. So I put my cursor on the end there, hit enter, and I'm going to put X. So basically, V is the counterbore, X is the depth symbol, right? And that's 0.25. I'll just type it in. 0.250. We want 3 decimal places on that. And then I want the whole thing to be middle left. So left justified. There we go. Click away. And it's all nice, except for one thing, the precision again, right? So I need it 3 decimal places. There we go. Now it's looking good. That's a dimension. Oh, and I need 5 times, right? So there's 5 of them. There we go. So that one dimension dimensions all 5 holes as far as their size goes. All the formed holes, the through hole, the counterbore, and the depth, all in one. So that makes good sense. Another thing I need to adjust before we're done here is I don't want that center mark in there. That's messing me up, right? I want radial lines coming out from the center of the cover plate here, and I want that to go through there. I don't want this vertical and horizontal thing because it's not. That's not it. So let's go to properties. Control 1 gets you the properties panel, and if I look in, there's a lot of stuff going on for a dimension, but one of them, let's see, one of them is the center mark, right, where I can turn that off or on. Center mark, it says line. I'm going to pull this down and say none. So I'm going to take out the center mark for this thing. See how that works? Very nice. Auto hide that. Scoot that over here. Okay, how about I'll draw the center. So back to the center layer, right? And I'll draw those radial lines. This is what I mean by the radial lines. So I'm going to come out here at, I'll give it a little gap at my 15-degree angle, around there, and I'll go through this line a little bit past it. There. That's all I want. And then the center, the circle does the rest of the work. So there. All right. I just realized I didn't draw this correctly. Get it. All right, so that's what I mean by those. So that should take care of it. Any questions?